All right.
Great. Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar sponsored by our Civil Dialogue Committee from the Diocese of St. Petersburg. Today, we welcome Paige Cargioli, our guest speaker. Paige is a member of our Diocesan Civil Dialogue Committee. She's a graduate of Boston College. She has a degree in pastoral ministry and mental health counseling. Paige has her own counseling business in Tampa called Open Heart Holistic Therapy, where she helps people work on forgiveness issues and other things. She's married to Dr. Stephen Oakey, professor at St. Leo University, my alma mater, as is Boston College, I have to say. They have a beautiful 2-year-old daughter named Dorothy, and just join me in welcoming.
Thank you very much. I'm like making sure I'm not on mute and everything. So I think you're gonna see on my screen people popping up for the waiting room, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with a prayer just to get us kicked off, and then I'm gonna kind of orient you to how I'm gonna do this talk. So let's see. All right, so here's our prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where civil words prevail, show me how to model love. Help me remember the God-given dignity of all and invite others to do the same. Show me how to build bridges and not walls, and see first what unites us rather than how we diverge. Let me seek to understand before asking to be understood. Give me a listening heart filled with empathy and compassion. May I be clear in sharing my own position and respectful and civil in describing those of others. Let me never tolerate hateful ideas. May I invite all to charity and love. Lord, help me to imitate your compassion and mercy. Make me an instrument of your peace. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. All right, so we're gonna do, I think, a little, well, first, I want to make sure we have the question, why are we here? All right, so we're here, and I want to let everybody know or be open to, if you've used Zoom before, to use the chat feature. If you have any questions, Carlos is going to be monitoring the chat, so he can keep track of those for the end of the meeting. If you have any specific questions, or if you have any questions on the material, go for it. I'll answer as much as I can. But also, I'm going to be asking for some feedback. And I like to use the chat for that feedback. So if you open up the chat window and see, and if you have feedback or a question, throw it in there. I'm kind of watching it, so I'll try to pay attention as much as I can, but there's definitely parts in the talk where I'd love to hear your feedback through the chat. All right, apparently Bernadette is struggling with the audio, but everybody else is okay, it seems. Okay. All right. So yeah, so no audio, just chat. If you have a question or feedback, send it right in. All right. So here we go. Why are we here? We are here because we're having a difficult time understanding each other. We're feeling more disconnected from the people that we love, and we're feeling triggered, and we're not always sure how to react in those triggering moments. And we often end up arguing or just feeling super uncomfortable or retreating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these points and show how to understand, how to connect, and how to cope with those triggers. So to start, the real question is, why do we care to understand someone who doesn't agree with us? Like, why? You can answer it in the chat. It can be like a silly answer too. You know, you can be like, just to change their minds. That's fine. Like, I see some typing happening. Because we love them. Yes, I agree. We're afraid that we're wrong. Oh, sometimes to accomplish what I need the other person to understand me. Okay, getting something I want or to feel secure in the relationship because I need to understand them better so we can get along. That's good. To have relationship, to be on the same sheet of music, to get a better understanding. Yeah. So I put yeah. Yes. A couple of the answers I have are to change their minds. If you're here for minds changing or how to win an argument, that's not going to happen. So just giving you a spoiler alert, no argument winning here. To get a different perspective or to get a broader perspective, to learn even. But I think really it's because it is a lot because we love them and we want to connect with them and we want to get closer to who they are ultimately. So how do we seek to understand? This is like the main, I would say, this is like some of the most important stuff right here is how do we do this? And the first thing I have on the list, first two things, which are really your big takeaways, are active listening, so being able to listen, and to find common ground and shared values. So active listening is something, if you ever took any like counseling 101 class or maybe even a social work type of class, you're going to have to practice active listening at some point. They're going to teach you about it and how to listen basically with your whole body and how to respond and how to clarify and to try your very best to withhold judgment. So I have this little image on the screen here and it says, pay attention. You're not thinking about what you're going to say next. Withhold judgment. Reflect. So think about what they're saying. Clarify if you have any questions. Summarize what you think they're trying to say. And then you kind of have to go back and clarify, summarize, if it's not quite meshing. And then once you get that clarity, you can feel more open to share more perspective, your own perspective or your own experience. Or that sharing could also simply be having understood what they said. So you kind of are just repeating back to them what they just said. So you got to be able to do that to start to understand. All right. So, and then when you're good at active listening, it becomes easier to actually find that common ground and shared values. So again, I'm going to ask for the chat. If you were going to think of, like, if you're thinking of that person who you disagree with, who you're struggling to understand, what is the common ground and the shared value? Like, you might already know, or try to guess, I don't know, or have an idea. Can you put some stuff in the chat? Like, what's something that's common ground? Faith, family. Oh, there you go. Certain values. Wanting harmony, we hope. Right. Respect. Shared history, friendship. I think friendship is a good one. Common ground might be, we all want the best kind of, like, we want people to be cared for. We want the world to be a better place. It's just not always clear how we get there. Or our opinions on how things are now might be based in how I feel about my value right now. So I'm going to dig more into the common ground thing because it comes up a lot in this talk, but it's one of the most important things is really listening and trying to find where those shared values are. Next thing is don't have expectations or judgment, which is a part of that active listening thing. Have a better understanding of yourself and why you believe what you believe. Because if you feel more secure in your own beliefs and values, then it's a lot easier, per se, to have the conversation and to be able to listen to somebody else's perspective, because your perspective isn't really threatened if you feel secure in what you believe or think, or you feel at least a little bit secure. And the more secure you feel in your own beliefs and why you believe what you believe, the less likely you'll feel like you need to argue, or you'll feel as triggered or threatened in the relationship. The next thing is you just want to be able to be more charitable and seek to understand why the other person believes what they believe by asking those questions. Even guessing why a person believes what they believe for yourself can help you become more compassionate. You know, maybe you're thinking they want to be right. Well, I can identify with wanting to be right. You know, maybe they're just feeling lonely and they need someone to talk to. I can identify with that. Maybe they're feeling out of control or they're looking for an easy solution. Those are things that we can all sort of identify with in why we maybe believe what we believe. Or it might be because of their upbringing. You go, well, this is kind of how they were brought up, so I kind of understand why they're at where they're at. And being charitable in how we interpret what we think people think is important, again, to have that more compassionate conversation. Or just asking, you know, what made you come to this belief? Did you always believe this thing? Those kinds of questions are a good thing to do. All right, so let's keep moving. So here's the next thing. I have two models on how to communicate and understand. So the models to communicate and understand that I have here, we have Healing Polarization in the Church. It's a relatively new article from NPR. And I'm not going to go into huge detail on each of these, but you'll see some very familiar things that I've already talked about. Build relationships. So you have to have relationships if you're going to heal polarization. Be uncomfortable. I really like this because it's just reminding you that this isn't, I don't want to say it's supposed to be comfortable or it's not supposed to be comfortable, but when you're having a tough conversation with somebody that you disagree with, it's probably not going to be comfortable. But if you can find common ground, that starts to open up the connection so that you can feel more comfortable in the conversation with the person and not feel like you're in opposition. But it's going to be uncomfortable when you're disagreeing with somebody or you're going to have that intentional conversation with someone. This is one of my favorites as well. Recognize the differences between disagreeing on principles and disagreeing with the prudential application of those principles. The common ground is probably the principle. And a lot of times when people are arguing or disagreeing, it's over how you use them or how you accomplish something. It's more the details on how to get there. So if you can keep the principle in mind, you can keep the value in mind, you keep your, whatever the goal is in mind that you both have similar values about, then it's easier to sort of find more compromise in the middle and how. Even to just continually go back to that can help someone have a better conversation. Our favorite word in the diocese, dialogue, not debate, number 5. Again, debates are usually competition, trying to win something, and dialogue is trying to understand and connect. And then lastly, care, really. Luckily, we all care and we all love our people, even if we disagree with them. But that's a really important thing. It's not about being right. It's not about changing anybody's mind. It's just about caring for people and wanting us all to do well and to be taken care of and to be loved. So I enjoyed this read. So, all right, the next one. Oh, not that. All right. The next one we have is from Braver Angels. I don't know if you guys have heard of Braver Angels, but they are a group that basically gets Republicans and Democrats together in a room and they talk and they teach them how to talk. And they have different chapters all across the country, and they have a pretty simple model to follow if you're having, especially a political conversation with people. And if you look at the picture on the screen, you can maybe, a lot of people like this picture because we've got like these different sort of temperatures where you go from, you know, they are enemies, they are deplorable, they've been duped, oh, to, oh, they have something to contribute, or they have a lot to contribute, you know, going from hatred to respect and appreciation for the person, really being able to get that perspective, even if I only agree with parts of the perspective, and finding those parts that we can agree on. That takes a lot of intentionality and takes attentive listening, and it takes work. Like I said, work and uncomfortable, not things humans are always great at. But with the people that we love, sometimes we're willing. So here it is. And again, you're going to see this. It's very similar to what I've already said. We've got clarify and paraphrase. That's the first thing. That's essentially the active listening piece. It's trying to figure out just trying to make sure you hear what they're saying, and they can say, yes, I know you heard me because you said back to me what I said and I agreed with you. That's basically what it is. And then we have the finding the common ground. That's number 2. Agree and praise. Find the thing you can agree on and be like, great, we both have that same idea. We both have this same value. I have on here compliment sandwich. You know, that's kind of what this model is. If you've ever heard of the compliment sandwich, it's great, you're so passionate, I love you, but this is what I'm thinking, but I still really like this other piece. That's the compliment sandwich. You give the criticism in the middle. That's a little bit of what this is, because the next thing is to pivot. And this is something that you don't see as much in other models. It's you indicate you're about to offer a different perspective. And if they don't want a different perspective, then you kind of just move on. But you're basically saying, once you've understood, you've praised, then you pivot. You say, you know, I have a different perspective that I can offer. And they usually, I mean, most of the time, if people are feeling understood, they're like, sure, you know. But that other experience, or that's not, we're not using like facts. So it's my personal experience, or my personal beliefs, my personal values, and my personal story, and why this is important to me. The other thing you can do is, I have on here, probe. So if you're not going to do the perspective, you can probe, just ask more questions to qualify, or to clarify. So you might say, you know, what do you think is the role of national borders? Is there any gun legislation you would be comfortable with? What should the government be in control of? What's our human responsibility to take care of the earth? Those kinds of things. You know, you can just figure out how are we going to contribute and work together? So again, you can learn more. And the other thing is, that person will feel heard and feel more connected to be able to communicate with you, because they trust that you're listening, and you know, want to hear your experience, and probably love you too. Hopefully, these are with the people that we love. All right, so the point is to touch someone's heart, to touch the people we love's heart. Reaching people's emotions is the best way to change their minds. But we're not trying to change their minds. This isn't like a manipulation tactic, but it's a genuine, intentional trying to understand. The other thing is, reaching other people's emotions could change my mind. So you have to be open for it to go both ways. All right, now here's the next question. what ideas do you have, or have you tried to connect more with the people that you disagree with? Like, is there anything that you've done that's like really specific to talk with people that you disagree with? Or like, did you have a meeting? I don't know. Read a book, set a time aside. Have you done anything like that? Or an idea that you've had? You can write it in the chat. Okay, I like this. I tried to read some of the same articles that she was reading. Done that too. Listen more, talk less. Here we go. We have agreed not to discuss politics. Maybe this is not ideal. Actually, could be fine. We'll go there. We'll get there. AKA boundaries. All right, sounds like you guys are at a lot. So let's keep going. All right, I'll give you some ideas. So, all right, here we go. Yeah. Unfortunately, just stop talking about the issues that are triggers. Yep. More tolerant of said, yeah. Okay. Listen for emotional content and begin there. That's good. So like trying to pay attention to where there's more of an opening. So if you're going to dig in, have the difficult conversations where you want to connect with somebody, especially if it's really important to them. Something makes me think sometimes when we're able to just throw politics out the window with people that we love or having those conversations, it makes me think maybe it's not actually that important to us. I'm not sure. We act like it's super important, but then we don't want to talk with people that we love about it. It's confusing. Anyway, so here we go. Connecting requires intentionality. It requires intentionality. You've got to do your own work. I'm not going to read all of them, but you guys should all Google it and read it sometime. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 10 Commandments of Nonviolence mostly have to do with caring for your own spiritual and physical self before doing anything. So being able to do your own work, understand yourself is extremely helpful in being able to have these conversations and avoid triggers or be able to cope with your triggers better. Pray together. I have somebody on here who just said that they shared Bible passages. That's kind of like an interesting idea. That could almost be like praying. Blessed are the peacemakers. Yep. The Bible's always fun, so it doesn't seem to change people's minds all the time. So it goes. All right, so pray. I have this idea, exchange one article a week and talk about it, comes from, I got this idea from Stephen Hassan. If you don't know, he's a psychologist who knows a lot about cults and cult deprogramming, but I thought, well, this is kind of nice. So basically, again, you have a set aside time or you have a set aside plan for how you're going to talk. And you can have like, I'll give you one article, you give me one article, and we just focus on that. That's all. Because a lot of times you want to like keep throwing you want to just throw everything at everyone. And it's like, I need to just focus on one thing. So that's one way to sort of keep the conversation open and having like a set aside time to chat or talk about it, or maybe not, just feel like you're kind of connecting because you're sharing. I have watch a movie or TV show together and talk about it, or you can watch it apart and talk about it. I have here have safe topics. So that's what Deacon Scott was saying, was sort of like, we just agreed not to talk about it. But even for yourself, if you kind of know what the safe topics are, you steer the conversation in that direction. It's okay. I think it's okay to avoid for your own sort of mental health But once you have that grounding and security, or you want to open up that conversation again, you can have more resources, more ideas, more ways to do it, especially if the other person is willing. Then you don't have to worry about having the safe topic or like getting away from something. Or if you start to go onto a topic you don't like, you're like, do you really want to talk about this right now? Or can we talk about it some other time when I'm prepared? Or when we're both better prepared, but not as a debate, just to understand. I have here have a safe word, which is again just another offshoot of like safe topics. You know, where you just know like we're not going here now, we got to change. Or I have on here set boundaries. These kind of fall under setting boundaries. You can you can have that time set apart for when you talk. But yeah, like I had something else in my mind, I lost it, but it will come back to me. A quick question on here is, what do you think when another person is not willing to talk about it? Well, I would say respect the boundary. You could also ask the question, what could I do, or how can I help so that we can talk about it, to see if there's some structure that could be added. And if the answer is no, again, you can't do everything. So yeah, so I have on here some ideas for setting boundaries. I don't want to talk about this right now. Can we talk about something else? If we're going to discuss this, can we lay some ground rules first? I would like to talk with you more about this, but in a more intentional and loving way to help me understand. Or it could just be like, I'm really caught off guard right now. Can I take a minute or 10 to sort of regroup? So there's lots of ways you can kind of set boundaries without it being like a cold turkey, like no talking. All right, I'm reading the chat. I'm like, oh, this is a fun one. This is a good question. This is a good question. The idea that somebody doesn't want to talk about something, but keeps bringing it up. I'm sure we've experienced that, where it's like, I'm talking about this, I'm talking about this, I'm talking about this, I have an opinion. And then you go to say something and then they're like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm sorry for that's hard. Let's keep moving. All right. But it's, again, you can ask the question, well, you could say something like, well, you were talking a lot about it and I really want to understand, what can I do so that we can talk about it? That's, but again, it's hard when you're in the moment, right? And we're going to get to that. So that in the moment thing is the hardest, All right, so here we go. Oh, I threw this in because, again, if any of you guys have been to some of the civil dialogue stuff, or if you haven't seen it, you should see it. It's following the rules for civil dialogue. And it's kind of hard to be like, time out, we're going to do civil dialogue rules before we talk. But again, you can still do a timeout and be like, I want to talk more about this, but I'm not really prepared right now. Can we prepare or do something more intentional, or have more ground rules, or set more boundaries, or be kinder to each other? That's perfectly okay. So I'm going to read them because they're so good. I worked as a school counselor in Diocese, and I did some teaching of these civil dialogue rules with 8th graders, but it's applicable to all of us. So let's hear. Here are the rules of civil dialogue. We are here to understand each other, not persuade each other. We will speak for ourselves using I statements. We won't try to represent a whole group, and we will not ask others to. So when I'm doing an I statement, I'm not trying to talk about, I'm not trying to talk about a whole group. I'm not giving a fact. I'm giving my own experience or personal narratives. We'll avoid making grand pronouncements and connect with what we know and believe in our own experiences. These are like, basically, this is like our triggers, right? When somebody doesn't use an I statement, or they try to represent a whole group, or they make a grand pronouncement, those are the things where we're like, why? You know? So it's basically saying, like, these are the things we're not going to do. We will refrain from characterizing the views of others in a critical spirit. We will listen with resilience, staying with it even when something is hard to hear. That's good too. That's active listening. We will share speaking time and refrain from interrupting others. That can be hard when you're somebody who talks a lot. We will pass or pass for now. That's your boundaries. If we're not ready or willing to respond to a question, don't need to explain myself, just take a break. And we'll be mindful of each person is sacred, a dwelling of the Holy Spirit, and that our purpose is to build understanding among members of the Christian community. So if I'm going to make a statement about anyone, I better be making it in a way where they're sacred and an indwelling of the Holy Spirit. Oh, and here's the part why I think all of you might be here, is triggers. Arguments usually are happening because something feels threatened or triggered, and you don't have time to be like, let me pull out the civil dialogue rules. So why are we triggered? Go ahead and you can message why. Or yeah, you can send a message. Why are we triggered? Or if you know for yourself, like, feel free to share that, or not if you don't want to. Let me think. I know that I think for me, a trigger is basically if honestly, if I feel like the relationship is being threatened. It's almost as if I think if I disagree with someone, then they won't love me anymore. Let's see here. Your values and beliefs are challenged. Absolutely. That can also be why you're triggered. You feel very passionate about the issues. Yeah. Something hits a nerve and I want to hit back. Exactly. I've had a difficult, I've had a difficult experience on the topic. So it could be something where you have a personal experience with the topic and somebody is disagreeing with you and you're like, but I have a personal experience. Do you have a personal experience? That would be hard. Feeling judged or disagreeing or seeing it differently. Yep. Because we're offended by the other opinion or behavior, they're wrong, obviously. Sometimes something is a trigger if I'm not certain exactly where I stand on the issue, and it results in me becoming defensive. I can identify with that, where it's sort of like, I don't know if I have an opinion and I'm trying to figure it out. Here we go. Yes. If in the other person's view, I feel disregarded, not appreciated, or loved. Sometimes even when I see someone's opinion as disregarding or not loving somebody in general, like, it upsets me, where I'm like, how can you say that about somebody or something, like, so sort of vehemently? Like, it just doesn't seem Christian, right? It's kind of like mind-boggling. Oh man, Nancy's on a roll. I'm lazy and changing my mind with something that makes sense to me, so I just don't want to change my mind. Yes, it's sort of like, you could be that I have this whole cascade of things that I have to like reformat in my brain. So I'm going to shut down, or I'm going to avoid, or I'm going to fight. Yep, somebody speaks for or about an entire group based on hearsay or their opinion, but not on fact. Yes, that's extremely annoying. All right, so let's see here. I'm like, how does this? Someone who always tells you or hints for no reason. I'm not sure if I totally understand that one. Maybe it's somebody who's kind of like, they're not being direct in what they say or they believe, but they're kind of like, they're saying things as if you agree with them and you're not sure how to respond. I know that happens to me. Like there's sometimes those conversations that you're having where somebody just starts talking about something that they act as if you're going to totally 100% agree with them, and you're just like, I can't believe they're saying this right now. You don't know what to do. Wow, we got a lot of triggers here. You guys got into this one. All right. Okay, good. I got it. I like to be on a soapbox, and being triggered gives me that knee-jerk reaction that starts my engine. Well, and then, like I said, I think there's a lot of times when people are feeling insecure and they're getting triggered. Well, here we go. Well, let's just go to it. We're going there. Why are we triggered? We're triggered by the people that we love because we have higher expectations of them. Our own beliefs might be threatened. The relationship is threatened. They're wrong. They're stupid. They don't care about me or anyone else, or they're selfish. And here we go. Like we just said, this is what's happening. So what is really happening when you're triggered? You get that fight, flight, or freeze response. And then this week I also was learning about the fawn response, which is very interesting. But that's, so for Nancy, the soapbox and is the fight. You know, you're wrong. I'm right. I am ready for this. I'm ready for this. But we also know it's not really helping for our connection, or no, it's not going to change anyone's mind. We're just reacting. We say the thing that we know we shouldn't say, and we know it's not going to help anything. We get angry, we get sad, or we react without a second thought. And it takes practice to actually get that moment to pause. The other thing that we do, like I said, if I'm guessing, you know, when one person, I mean, I guess you're going to have different dynamics. Some people are going to like fight to the death, or until somebody runs away or avoids or leaves. Or, you know, one person's going to fight and the other person's going to freeze. Usually flight and freeze don't necessarily go together, because if somebody's leaving and the other one's freezing, there's nothing to fight about. So it's usually that we're going to do one of these things. So flight, you know, we run away, avoid, or change the subject. We still feel uncomfortable, like we should have done something more. And I would say the flight response is okay if it's in a sort of intentional boundary setting way. It doesn't have to be in a sort of, it doesn't have to necessarily be in like a trauma response or a triggering response way, but it's the same thing with the fight, to recognize in yourself that you want to run away, or that you're frozen, or that you're about to fight, and say, time out, I need a minute. Like, so that I don't hurt you and you don't hurt me, or you don't run away, so that we can stay connected. Because I really want to understand, I really want to connect with this. I don't want to be bulldozed, and I don't want to bulldoze you. I want us to learn to understand each other. But again, it takes practice. The other one I have on here is fawn. And it is described as the performative surface level engagement. So the fawn types seek safety by merging with the wishes, needs, and demands of others. They act as if they unconsciously believe the price of admission to any relationship is the forfeiture of all their needs, rights, preferences, and boundaries. So I think this is something that can happen. When I read this, I was like, oh, I think I can do that sometimes, where you kind of just go along with it, and you don't flight, you don't freeze, you just kind of are like, okay, you're right, you know. Yeah, I like this. Underneath that fawning is a whole lot of rage, though. Well, and I think when I saw the fawn type, I actually thought that sounds like something more of a kid, something a kid might do with like a parent. or and then that could also bleed into a future relationship. So yeah, so like as you got older, there would be more sort of a rage, like how could someone let me do that, you know? Or just, yeah, go along, get along. Exactly. And then this not helpful picture of the learning mindset versus the threat-based mindset is, you know, there's no real linear way of listening, doing, speaking, learning, but it is still intentional and open all along the way. So there's many paths, there's many ways to get there. That's why I've been giving you some of the resources to kind of give you an idea of all the different pathways you can take, giving you as many ideas as you can to sort of reach out, or to just build your own self-confidence to not have the conversation and feel okay with it, or to, you know, try to reach out and take some steps, or to feel brave when you feel triggered. All right, so how to cope with these triggers. Again, understanding yourself and feeling secure in your relationships and what you believe. And to do that, it's always helpful to have someone that you can talk to that understands. I think sometimes some of that disconnection is happening because people are feeling like they have no one to talk to. So being able to have ways to just get to have somebody to talk to who does understand, so you're not feeling misunderstood all the time, especially with people that you love. I have on here, forgive yourself when you react or don't know what to do or say or don't understand. You're not going to be perfect all the time. You can make all the intention in the world, but you still might react because, you know, we're human, and they might react too. And that's why I have also on here, forgive them. So they might react, or they might go overboard, or they don't want to talk about something. Remember that it's okay to feel uncomfortable in these situations. I think people sometimes it's like being uncomfortable and having some sort of like trauma response, very different. But a lot of times I think people feel like that uncomfortableness is like the same as trauma. And trying to really separate that in your mind sometimes takes professional help, but even just kind of knowing cognitively can help you again find that common ground easier and connect with other people easier. The fact is that the idea of nervousness and excitement are physiologically the same. So I think that's why when you're having these conversations and you start to find that common ground, or the conversation starts to open up a little bit more, you can go from that nervousness to that excitement. So just remember, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Another thing I have, I think I have it in the next slide, but all right, I have a couple verses here. These are always helpful, you know, something to meditate on. Everyone should be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. So this is all about pausing. It's about taking that moment when you know that you have been triggered. I think that's probably, again, one of the most important things is like I said, you're not going to every single time be able to pause. You're going to still react, but the more you practice it, the more you notice it, the easier it'll become. Love those who curse you, from the Sermon on the Mount. You know, that's trying to connect. All right, other ways to cope with triggers. Saying no, setting boundaries. Sometimes we avoid or move on quickly. It's okay if that's what you need to do. If you're not ready or you don't feel safe, it's fine. You can say, I don't want to argue about this right now. You can set aside time. Yeah, or you can say, I don't want to talk about this right now, or ever. But I think boundary setting is another important thing. But again, like, it doesn't have to be like a total block off of something. It can be just a pause and time and intention set aside for that conversation. If you're feeling triggered, you can also, if you have that chance to pause and you really want to have the conversation and try to understand, a good way to do that is to just ask questions, because asking questions is the best way for you to start listening and for you to find that common ground. And people love talking about themselves. And love talking about what they think. Though I know sometimes when you're talking to someone and they're spouting off about something, they don't even give you a chance to ask a question. But I think that, again, if you can find that polite, respectful entry point, then you can start to ask these questions like, where did you learn that? What experience have you had for that to ring true for you? What makes this so important to you? Have you always thought this? What convinced you it was true? Why, I have this one, why is being right more important than having a functioning relationship? I feel like some of us have maybe asked that before to our loved ones, what, like, but you have to be honest and ask these same things to yourself. These are things that aren't exclusive to the other person. Like, do I want to be more right? Do I care? Like, just asking those questions are important. And then to cope with those triggers, just listen. All right, and then I have it here. This is sort of like your wrap-up home takeaways that we're going with. What not to do. Nothing. Don't do nothing if you can help it. At least pray. Keep that person that you love top of mind, and trust that if you can't have that conversation, God is still going to be transforming your heart and their heart all along the way. I would, as a therapist, suggest don't cold turkey cut people out most of the time. There's always a caveat with that, especially if you're being like hurt physically or emotionally. But if it's just being annoyed or mad, it might be a good idea to think a little bit harder about that cold turkey cutout. Because a lot of times when you do that, it ends up kind of coming back around in another relationship in some way, shape, or form. So whether you reconcile apart from that person, what I'm saying is, like, they don't have to even be involved necessarily for you to have that self-reflection and making that choice for yourself, for your own healing journey, but also for that person. I've told people sometimes, if this person that says that they love you says you're ruining their life, why do you stick around? It's sort of like, what makes you, for your sake and for their sake, it might be good for you to take a break, because they said this is, if you're hurting each other or you feel like you're hurting each other, then make that choice. For out of love for each other, out of love and respect for each other. Doesn't always go over well, but all right. Don't assume the worst. Be charitable. I think we're all working on that every day. Don't let yourself be hurt or bulldozed. Find connections where you feel understood. If you have those connections where you feel understood, where you can have good conversations and even have some diverging beliefs or viewpoints, then you can probably do it with the other person too. It gives you a little bit more hope in your conversation. And don't give up. Do, like I said, at the very least, pray. And then what's my Catholic responsibility in all of this? Pray, try to understand. That's why I put try is like, try, ask some questions if you can, if it comes up. I'm not saying you have to like go make a huge plan with somebody, but if it's something that keeps coming up, like go into it, but be intentional about it, be strong about it, be secure about it. Try to connect and try to love. Take action out of love for all parties. So when you decide I need this boundary, I'm making this for you and for me, because I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to hurt you. Not because I'm mad at you and I just don't want to talk to you, even though you might feel that way too. You can feel both. All right, so be open to transformation. We're not going in to win an argument. Be open to seeing and understanding something I've never seen or understood before. That's what happens when we connect and find common ground and work together with people that we disagree with, or that we don't, even with the people that we agree with. As you learn and you go deeper and you hear about people's experiences and what they think and why they think it and where they come from, you start to transform. I mean, that's what happens in therapy, is people are seeking to understand themselves and they're seeking to see something that they haven't seen before. And then I also have here, let go when it's right. So this is sort of the nice version of, cutting people out. It's, you don't have to do everything. Trust God to do something. Sometimes you're not the one who's meant to reach this person in this way. You may have done everything you were supposed to do, and it's still triggering, or it's still upsetting. And at that point, you might have to just let it go and be like, I'm going to trust the Spirit on this one. God will do something through somebody else. And at that point, you can feel free, because you're like, I did what I could do, and I'm trusting God to do the rest. Because the truth is, God is the one who does all the transforming anyway. God is the one who does the connecting. So there we go. And just the review. Active listening. Listen, ask questions. It's going to be the best way to start to understand. Find common ground. And if you're the person who talks a lot, or if you're the person who talks a lot, chances are the person that you're talking to has heard what you've said multiple times. But I don't know, maybe it hasn't been the other way around. Or maybe they haven't felt that way. So give them a chance. Find the common ground. And again, that takes listening. Understand yourself and your beliefs. Know it's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to take a time out. It's okay to say, I don't want to talk about this with you for a very long time. That's okay if that's what you need to do. And that's okay for them to do if they want to do that. But you can always, every once in a while, check in, like, what can I do to make this easier? Or, maybe or is it not that important to you? And for our relationship that we have this conversation, they might say, no, it's just not that important to me. I don't want to, it's not something I'm really that interested in, or I really care to fight about, and then you might be like, oh, okay. All right. And then I say, it's okay to change your mind. Again, that can be kind of scary, but you have to always be open to the transformation on both sides. All right. And then, like I said, it's not my job to change anyone's mind. It's my job to love. God is the one who does transform. God is the one who transforms hearts and minds. God also loves too. So remembering that when we get triggered, or when we want to argue, or when we want to, insert ourselves, and knowing it's not for, it's I don't know if it's always to really transform the other person as much as it's for our own benefit to be heard or to be understood or to be right, or to be loved. But trusting that God is the one who will do the transforming. If I do my part in loving and trying to connect and trying to understand and trying to listen, but then also sharing my experience and being vulnerable that way. Because in that vulnerability, I can transform too. Oh, thank you. And thank you.